indigenous heathland has always been part of the character of the courses here. So the burning process, we can sort of see some history back to in some of the records of the club back into the 50s when they actually used burning as a management tool. So it has a long history, but probably in the last 15 or 20 years it's been used more systematically each year and doing cyclical burns on the areas on about a 7 to 8 year sort of cycle. It's very important in terms of keeping that balance between playability and keeping the vegetation there, taking the woodiness out of the plants and that sort of thing. We find it is a very important tool to keep those areas in the best condition possible.
So on the day, once the site's been prepared, so it's usually been prepared generally a month beforehand, so that gives it opportunity for hopefully the fuel that we use, which is just purely our own cuttings from other areas, to dry out to get a good fire, because we want more heat rather than smoke in our burns. So if it's wet or it's a lot more green material, you don't get the heat that you're after in the fire. So it's generally prepped a month earlier, and then it's always about tracking the weather leading up into that period we're allowed to burn. So we look for fairly close to still wind conditions. We start lighting a little small patch to see how the fire behaves. Even though you might think it's still, there might just be enough of a breeze to really kick it along. So just light a little bit first to see how the fire's reacting, and then we can see, well, it's either slow or we can light a few other areas up to get the fire moving and through the process. So once one area is sort of burnt through, we don't let it just keep lingering on. We put it out straight away. So we get the guys on the hoses to start watering behind the fire after it's probably been burning for 5 to 10 minutes, and then keep moving it that way. And that way we're sort of limiting the impact on the environment around us as well. So trying to limit the smoke as best we can. So what we're doing with the burn, by pretty much burning everything back down to ground level, it's giving an opportunity for all the plants that are existing in that area to have their moment in the sun. Over a sustained period of years, of just keep cutting back, the vegetation can become quite woody, especially at the base. And then that also then sort of smothers sunlight to the sort of lower growing plants underneath. So by removing those thicker bushy plants, gives those sort of undergrowth plants a chance to have their moment in the sun before it gets all dense and bushy again. With some of our heathland areas here at Royal Melbourne, we're lucky enough to have some orchids, and we find after having a fire it helps promote flower growth in these orchids, which sometimes might not happen without a burn. Some orchids are really encouraged by having a fire, and that way they'll put up a flower when it might not necessarily happen every year, but usually after a burn we get a good result with our orchids flowering afterwards, such as the sun orchid, tall leek orchid, and also our waxleaf orchid. So yeah, it's about helping those sort of plants that are hard to propagate or get going from a planted tube stock to grow naturally from their seed source. Also, then you get that evolution from the burn, that you start off with the small, thinner growth in the lilies and the wildflowers, before then the shrub material comes back and becomes the full body of the heathland areas, with the bossea and the silky tea tree becoming the main dominant throughout the heathland woody material.